Welcome to the debate. When a doctor wants to see, exactly what is broken inside you, they take an x-ray. You get this clean, jagged white line showing precisely where the fracture is.
Right, it's undeniably clear.
Exactly. The surgeon just points to the film and says, there it is, that's what we need to fix. And, well, usually when we talk about measuring business performance, there is this expectation of that same medical precision.
Yeah, you check the quarterly revenue, the spreadsheet shows a clear profit margin, and the executive points to the black or red ink and knows exactly where the company stands. It feels binary, profit or loss.
But then you step into the world of measuring the people side of an organizational change, and suddenly that precision X-ray machine is completely broken. We are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is, frankly, incredibly murky.
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. I mean, the moment you point a measuring stick at a person, they change how they act.
Which brings us to the central tension we are exploring today. When we evaluate how human beings adapt to new processes, can we accurately quantify human behavior with rigorous frameworks? Or does the very act of measuring inherently distort the human behavior we are trying to observe?
And that tension is exactly what we are dissecting. We are drawing our foundational arguments from a comprehensive training module titled Measuring the People Side of a Project. This module acts as a strategic guide to human-centric metrics.
Yeah, and our discussion today is meant to serve as an analytical overview of the material's core concepts. For the listener, this overview should really spark your interest to dive into the full material yourself, because there are fundamentally different philosophies on how to apply these concepts.
Absolutely.
I represent the perspective that rigorous, structured measurement is non-negotiable. Relying on precise baselines, robust statistical analysis, and strict tracking gates is absolutely essential to objectively validate the business impact of any change. Without it, you are just guessing in the dark.
And I take the opposing view. I argue that human behavior inherently resists that kind of clean spreadsheet quantification. Because metrics naturally invite system gaming, change managers have to prioritize a concept called minimum viable measurement, or MVM.
Which I think leaves you flying blind.
Well, I argue you have to build ethical trust rather than chasing some illusion of perfect data precision. If you try to X-ray human behavior, you don't get a clear picture. You just give the patient radiation.
That's a fun metaphor, but let me lay out why that structure is so critical. Without structured data, change management is just corporate theater. The module places a massive emphasis on establishing a firm baseline before a change even begins.
Right, the before and after snapshot.
Exactly. Because if you report to a sponsor that 60% of employees are using a new software tool, leadership has absolutely no way to know if that is a success. Did usage climb from 10% or did it fall from 90%?
Fair point.
A baseline is the only way you move from merely tracking activity to actually proving impact. And to do that, you have to utilize the full spectrum of statistics. I'm talking about looking at the minimum, the maximum, and the median, rather than just relying on a smoothed-out average.
Okay, I have to stop you right there, because your entire premise of a firm baseline assumes that the data we get from human beings is actually honest in the first place.
I mean, we're surveying professionals, yes.
But before we can even debate how much statistical rigor to apply to our baselines, we have to look at the source of the data. And when you are surveying humans about a change, the data is frequently fundamentally flawed, not because people are malicious, but because of a psychological mechanism the material identifies as the say-do gap.
Ah, right. The disconnect between what they say in a survey and what they actually do at their desk.
Exactly. It is this massive chasm between an employee saying, sure, I'll use the new system, and their actual behavior when the pressure of their daily job kicks in.
If you ask a room full of people if they support a new corporate initiative, you almost always get a chorus of yeses.
Because they want to look good.
Yeah, it's social desirability bias. Think about the mechanics of a corporate environment. People naturally want to avoid conflict with authority. Saying, sure, I'll use it, ends an uncomfortable conversation with a change manager immediately.
That's true.
And saying, I hate this tool and I'm not going to use it, invites a difficult, potentially career-limiting conversation. On top of that, people are naturally optimistic about their future behavior.
They genuinely intend to adopt the change.
But then their inbox overflows. Exactly. A client calls and they default to their old, familiar habits. Direct quantitative surveys that ask about future intent often just measure politeness and optimism. They do not measure true adoption. So your firm baseline is often built on a foundation of polite fiction.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. The say-do gap is absolutely real, but it isn't a flaw in the concept of measurement itself. It is simply a flaw in weak measurement.
Weak measurement?
Yes. The source material doesn't just point out that this gap exists, it offers highly structured methodologies to cut through the politeness and surface the truth. First, you stop asking about future intent entirely.
Because people can't predict what they'll do.
Right. As you said, people are terrible forecasters of their own behavior. If I ask you if you will go to the gym 3 times next week, you will likely say yes. But if I ask you how many times you went to the gym last week, you are forced to give me a concrete fact.
That makes sense.
So instead of asking employees, will you use this new platform, a rigorous measurement strategy asks, when did you last log into the platform and what alternative tool did you use instead? Concrete past behavior is much harder for the brain to dress up in optimism.
That helps, certainly, but it still relies on self-reporting.
Which is why the second layer is so crucial. You must triangulate stated intent with hard usage logs. The material gives a very clear example of rolling out a new project management tool. A team sends out a survey and it comes back 95% positive.
Everyone says they love it.
Exactly. But the hard usage data pulled from the IT backend shows only 3 out of 12 teams have actually created a project in the system. If you just ask people how they feel, you get the polite answer.
But IT logs don't lie.
Right. By triangulating, you compare their words against concrete digital evidence. The logs win. You find the discrepancy, and you can intervene. That requires rigorous, structured tracking.
Okay, but triangulating data in that way requires making honesty safe. You can't just cross-examine employees with their login data.
Why not? If the data shows they aren't using it.
Because imagine the psychological impact. A manager coming to your desk and saying, you told the survey you love the tool, but my IT logs show you haven't logged in for 3 weeks.
Well, you wouldn't phrase it quite like that.
But the implication is there. The second people realize you are comparing their survey answers to their digital footprint, they feel surveilled. And when people feel surveilled, they stop giving you any feedback at all. To bypass the say-do gap safely, you have to completely remove the social cost of a negative answer.
Okay, so how do you do that without losing the data entirely?
By using indirect, projective questions. The material outlines this clearly. Instead of asking, why aren't you using the tool, which makes the employee defensive, you ask, what would make this tool hard for a busy team to adopt?
Ah, putting it on a hypothetical busy team.
Yes. It allows the employee to project their own frustrations. They can voice their doubts without admitting personal resistance. The material also suggests utilizing physical, anonymous feedback tools in the early stages, rather than confronting them with usage dashboards.
I mean, that is a fair distinction. Capturing sentiment requires psychological safety, yes, but assuming we establish those safe methods to get honest feedback, the question then scales up. How comprehensive should our tracking systems be?
I'd argue minimal.
But the business is actually trying to get a return on its investment. While I appreciate the nuance of projective questions, an executive sponsor who just spent $5 million on a digital transformation needs hard numbers. This is where I argue for deep, structured tracking, specifically to prevent what the module refers to as hero dependency.
Wait, hero dependency? Are you talking about that one super user who throws off the curve for everyone else?
Exactly.
Because mathematically, I see how an average could be skewed, but does that really justify tracking everyone at a granular level?
It absolutely justifies it. And here is the mathematical reality of why relying on a simple average is so dangerous. Imagine a department of 10 employees rolling out a new operational software. 9 of those employees are confused by the training and use the software for 0 minutes during the week.
So basically no adoption.
Right. But one employee, the hero, is a tech-savvy super user who loves the tool and spends 200 minutes in the system setting up templates. If leadership only looks at the mathematical mean, the average usage is 20 minutes per person.
Oh, I see. The executive dashboard flashes green.
Yes, it looks like a steady, successful rollout, but the reality is a complete disaster. 90% of the team is paralyzed. That is why statistical rigor is non-negotiable. You must look at the range, the minimum and the maximum, and specifically the median. In that example, the median usage is 0.
Okay, the math makes sense. You track the extremes to find the laggards.
Exactly. Deep tracking finds the truth, hiding behind the average. The text highlights a real-world example of an expense reporting system where the change management team established a baseline error rate of 22% before the change.
And they track that all the way down.
Yes, over 3 months, by rigorously tracking both process and outcome metrics, they watched that error rate drop precisely to 8%.
Let's clarify that for a second, because that jargon trips up a lot of leaders. Process metrics versus outcome metrics.
Gladly. It is a critical distinction. A process metric tracks the implementation journey. For example, how many people attended the training session? How many software licenses were activated?
Basically, did we do the things we said we'd do?
Right. An outcome metric tracks the final business destination. Did our sales cycle actually get 10% faster? Did our error rate actually drop?
And you need both.
You absolutely do. A massive trap in organizational change is having perfect process metrics like 100% training attendance and absolutely zero improvement in the outcome metric. If you don't track both comprehensively, you might declare a project a massive success while the business continues to bleed money.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that you need that level of detail everywhere. Let me tell you why.
Go ahead.
I understand the desire for that level of proof, but the reality of executing it is entirely different. Chasing perfect, comprehensive tracking systems paralyzes projects. Where practitioners try to measure dozens of different data points, the mean, the median, the process, the outcome, it creates an immense burden.
It's a burden, sure, but it's necessary work.
It overwhelms the project team who has to collect the data, and it overwhelms the employees who have to provide it. This is where the concept of minimum viable measurement, or MVM, is vastly superior in practice.
But doesn't minimum viable measurement mean you are inherently accepting blind spots?
It means you are prioritizing action over data perfection. Clean, flawless data rarely exists during a major corporate transition anyway. Everything is chaotic.
That's why you need the rigor.
But if a measurement strategy requires hours of manual spreadsheet work every single week just to maintain that pristine baseline you love, the project team will eventually burn out. They'll just stop doing it. MVM is about asking a very specific question.
Which is what?
What is the absolute smallest amount of data we need to collect to make an 80% confident decision right now? The module lays out a critical principle here. A fast, agile decision based on 80% accurate data is almost always better than a late decision based on 100% accurate data.
I struggle with that. An 80% confident decision is just another way of saying you are 20% blind. If you make a pivot based on incomplete data, you risk alienating the exact users you're trying to help.
I will take 20% blind today over 100% perfect a month from now, when the project is already completely off the rails and the budget is spent.
I just don't see how that works in reality.
You should limit your focus. Keep it to just 2 or 3 key metrics, one for activity, one for proficiency, and one for sentiment. In fact, some of the most effective, agile methods mentioned in the analytical overview aren't automated data logs at all. They are intentionally low-tech, manual options.
Like what exactly?
Direct observation, daily stand-up huddles, physical token boxes.
Token boxes.
Yeah. Imagine placing a box by the door of a training room. As employees leave, they drop a green, yellow, or red poker chip into a slot to indicate how confident they feel about the new process. It is incredibly simple, requires zero cognitive load to participate, and provides an immediate, visceral feedback loop to the facilitator.
Okay, I see how that's fast.
Right? A complex automated dashboard might not show a proficiency drop until a month later, when the quarterly numbers come in. The token box tells you the room is confused the second they walk out the door.
Well, while a token box is a nice, quick pulse check for a facilitator, it does absolutely nothing for the executive sponsor.
Why not? It's real data.
You mentioned cognitive load earlier. Executives care about revenue, efficiency, and risk reduction. They do not care about a bucket of green tokens. If you walk into a steering committee meeting and say, "The vibes are green," you will be laughed out of the room.
You obviously translate the sentiment to the board.
But to secure a sponsor value, you have to connect people metrics to executive priorities. And doing that requires narrowing themes through project gates. You start with broad themes during the initiation phase, you filter them into specific categories during the design phase, and you convert them into precise numeric targets before launch.
And I argue that systematic funnel is exactly what causes metric overload.
How so? It's literally narrowing things down.
Because, yes, executives care about revenue and risk, but if you present an executive with a dashboard showing 30 different hyper-precise metrics that you filtered through your complex project gates, they will struggle to understand if the project is actually succeeding.
Not if it's designed well.
The human brain, even an executive's brain, has limits. The more energy a leader has to spend trying to decipher a dense, complicated spreadsheet, the less inclined they are to actually take action. You have to humanize the data. Match the delivery channel to the audience, tell a story, and keep it incredibly focused on the vital few indicators.
Actually, we agree on keeping the presentation focused. A good dashboard should be clean, but the underlying tracking engine has to be robust to generate those focused, accurate insights in the first place.
We might just have to agree to disagree on the engine itself.
Fair enough, but let's look further down the timeline, past the launch. Whether you favor my approach of complex baselines and project dates, or your approach of agile, minimal measurement, both approaches eventually face the exact same wall.
Long-term sustainment.
Yes. What happens after the project team packs up and leaves?
The quiet erosion begins.
Precisely. Changes rarely fail loudly with protests in the cafeteria. They erode quietly. People just drift back to their old, comfortable habits.
It's just human nature.
The module outlines several red flag metrics that indicate a change is slipping away, and you have to be watching for them. For example, the new hire gap.
Ah, that's a huge one.
Right? The project team successfully trains the entire company on a new system. 6 months later, the project team dissolves. A new employee is hired. Because the new system was never formally baked into HR onboarding, the new hires manager simply trains them on the old, inefficient workaround that they personally prefer.
Because that's what the manager is comfortable with.
Exactly. The erosion is silent but devastating. You also see the slow slide in system usage over time. To prevent this, you absolutely must execute rigorous handoffs to permanent process owners.
I agree that a handoff is necessary, but a handoff of what?
A handoff of strict, documented thresholds and a response plan. You don't just hand over a spreadsheet and wish the operational manager good luck. You shrink the metric set, certainly, but you document exactly what happens when the numbers slip.
Like a trigger warning?
Yes. For example, documenting that if system usage drops below 70% for 2 consecutive weeks, the process owner is required to run a refresher session. Without that rigid, predefined structure, the measurement simply stops the moment the project team leaves.
I agree completely that sustainment is vital and that the new hire gap is a ticking time bomb that most organizations forget to track. But I reframe sustainment entirely around a different core issue.
Which is?
The ethics of measurement. You can set up all the strict response plans and thresholds you want, but long-term data collection only works if employees trust that the data isn't being weaponized against them.
Weaponized? How does an operational metric become a weapon?
It happens all the time, and it triggers a concept from economics and organizational psychology called Goodhart's Law.
Remind me of the exact phrasing.
When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. If an operational manager takes over your meticulously structured metrics and sees a low adoption score for a specific team, the unethical response is to send that team a low performer warning.
Well, sure, that's poor management.
But it's common. If measurement is used to punish people rather than support them, employees will instantly figure out how to game the numbers to survive.
But do people really go out of their way to fake data?
Absolutely. And the text provides some fascinating modern examples of how the mechanics of this work. Look at coffee badging.
Coffee badging?
Yeah. Companies institute strict return-to-office mandates requiring employees to be in the building 3 days a week. The metric is badge swipes.
Okay.
But employees have childcare logistics, long commutes, and they know they are more productive at home. So to survive the arbitrary metric, they swipe their ID badge at 9 a.m., grab a coffee in the break room to prove they were there.
And then they leave.
They leave an hour later to actually go do their work from home. The executive dashboard shows fantastic return-to-office compliance, but the building is empty.
Wow, that is a fascinating subversion of the metric.
Another example from the material is AI token maxing. Tech companies want to prove their massive investments in artificial intelligence are paying off, so they track how many internal AI queries their developers are running.
Let me guess, they tie it to performance reviews.
They put leaderboards up. If your bonus or your job security is suddenly tied to how much you use the internal AI, but you are too busy doing your actual job to learn the new tool, what do?
You game it.
Developers at major tech firms have literally written automated Python scripts to ping the AI with useless text loops 1,000 times a day. Their individual consumption stats look incredible. Management gets off their back, but it is entirely false compliance.
So the argument is that the pressure of the metric creates the very distortion we are trying to avoid.
Exactly. And that is why the text states an absolute golden rule. You must measure the change, not the people.
Measure the change, not the people.
Right. A low number is a diagnostic signal that the tool is flawed, or the workflow is too complex, or the training was insufficient. The moment it becomes evidence that a specific employee is failing, Goodhart's law takes over.
That makes a lot of sense.
Ethical measurement requires transparency. You have to tell people exactly why you are measuring them, what the data will be used for, and you must protect anonymity wherever possible. Trust is the only thing that turns measurement into honest insight. Without ethical guardrails, sustainment isn't measurement, it is just perpetual surveillance.
And human beings will always eventually find a way to outsmart surveillance.
Every single time.
Well, bringing our two perspectives together, it seems we are looking at two very different sides of a highly complex coin.
Very different.
On my side, I maintain that structured baselines, statistical depth that looks at the extremes rather than just the mathematical average, and clear, rigorous, hands-off metrics are foundational. To me, they're the only way to objectively translate the messy, unpredictable reality of human behavior into actionable business outcomes.
And without that structure, you feel we simply cannot prove impact to the people funding the change?
Exactly.
And I maintain that change managers must respect the mechanics of human behavior, specifically Goodhart's law above all else. We have to rely on minimum viable measurement and actively build ethical trust precisely because human metrics are uniquely vulnerable to gaming, anxiety, and the data gap.
You think treating people like nodes on a spreadsheet loses the truth.
Right. If we demand perfect data at the cost of trust, we lose the actual truth of the human experience.
Yet, in exploring this tension, I think we have found some crucial points of convergence. We both agree that relying on single, superficial vanity metrics, like a mathematically misleading mean or a simple count of system logins, creates a dangerous blind spot for leadership.
Absolutely. Compliance theater, whether it is coffee badging or AI token maxing, helps no one.
And we both agree on the core rule regarding data types. Quantitative data tells you what is happening, but it must always be paired with qualitative sentiment to understand why it is happening.
You need the hard numbers, but you desperately need the human story behind them. Exactly. Now, for our listener, we've really only been able to provide a high-level overview of the concepts today. The source material itself contains an extensive appendix outlining specific, common change management measurements.
It's very detailed.
It breaks them down methodically into leading indicators, which help you predict success before launch, and lagging indicators, which confirm the success afterward.
Yeah, it functions as a very practical menu for designing a tailored measurement strategy. It covers everything from tracking initial awareness rates to identifying long-term proficiency plateaus.
It's a great tool.
It's a highly useful resource, and we highly recommend that you dive directly into the module yourself to explore that appendix and see which metrics actually align with your specific organizational reality.
We hope this analytical overview sparks your interest to do just that and to build your own perspective on these philosophies. We are going to leave it to you, the listener, to decide where the right balance lies for your projects.
Whether you lean toward deep, structured data rigor or agile, human-centered minimalism.
Because ultimately, there is no single perfect answer that applies to every culture. But asking the right questions about how your people respond to measurement is how you find the strategy that works.
Well said.
We started today talking about the medical precision of X-rays, how you get a clean, jagged white line that shows exactly what is broken. Measuring the nuances of human behavior will never give you an image that sharp.
The waters will always be a little muddy.
Always. But whether you build a highly calibrated, statistically deep tracking machine, or you rely on the trusting, minimal pulse of the people doing the work, the ultimate goal is exactly the same: to stop guessing in the dark and finally start seeing the true shape of the change. Thank you for joining us on The Debate.